Hi diddly ho, neighborinos. I'm here in the movie Emporium, and I'm gonna tell you about three movies that are just straight fucking me up lately. This is gonna be kind of like a Michael recommends kind of a segment. These are three movies that I've watched recently that I want to give to you as recommendations. So we're gonna start easy. We're gonna get weird, okay? So easy. A lot of people probably seen this. I just rewatched it. I saw it back in the day when it first came out on like physical media, DVD shit. I loved it, but that was 12 years ago. So now I'm wondering, did it hold up? And yes, it holds up. Orphan is fucking great. My wife and I recently watched this because she hadn't seen it. And I was like, yo, you gotta watch this. It's a great movie. And she didn't know about the ending. And it fucked us both up. It's a really good movie. It's a lot longer than I remember. Like most horror movies are like in that 90-minute range. This one's a little over 2 hours. But if you know anything about me, I love a good long movie because you've got a lot of plot in there, you got a lot of characters. It's like just way better for me. If you tell me a movie's 80 minutes, I'll be mildly intrigued. But if you're like, Michael, that movie's 3.5 hours, and be like, boy, pop up some fucking popcorn, let's get involved in a story. I really like slow movies too. I used to hate slow movies. Like when I was younger, my favorite movie probably of the time was Machete, because that's just 80 minutes of pure action and crazy shit. But like now that I'm old and boomer, I've gotten to really like slow moving, establishing movies. It's kind of weird. So I always have to like taper my recommendations to people. Like if I'm talking to people at work or whatever, like recommending movies, I gotta like start talking to them and be like, oh wait, I gotta remember like most people don't like slow pieces of shit like I do. But this movie is not a slow piece of shit. It's just long and it's got a lot of character stuff. And that's what I really, really like about it. You get involved in the family, and then that makes it like, the payoffs are better because you're into it with them. You're like, oh shit, I know these people, as opposed to like other horror movies. You spend 5 minutes getting to know them. They're the same cliche, like the jock, the nerd, the horror, all that kind of stuff, and then they kill them off one by one. Like, I hate that trope so much. I gotta go off on a little tangent, but like that drives me nuts because there's only two ways to do it, right? If you do it unironically, that's annoying because it's been done a million times before. Or if you do it and you're winking at the camera, it's like, okay, yeah, I get you're clever. We've all noticed this about horror movies. You're so fucking clever. Like, it's really annoying. If you're going to do that trope, I would say don't make movies and stick to watching movies because it's really annoying and it's really played out, and you can't play it. You can't do it straight. You can't do it regular, so just don't do it. Leave it for the 1980s. Anyway, tangent aside, Orphan is great, and Orphan's not like that. So if you haven't seen it, it's this little girl is an orphan, and her, she gets adopted. I was going to say her parents, but I guess that doesn't make her an orphan. But she gets adopted, and then shit gets weird, and the horror ensues. So it's really, really good. Highly, highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it. Again, a lot of people have. I think they're making a sequel, I read, which is crazy. And it's kind of based on a true story. And by kind of, I mean, like, it's a straight-up true story when you look into it. So my next recommendation, for all the people who like really slow-moving movies, I watched Vampyr, or Vampyr. This is a German production, 1932, in the Criterion Collection. Ooh, beautiful packaging. So every time I watch an old movie, I feel like I know what to expect going in. It's going to be a little slow. Some of the acting is going to be overacted. Going to be black and white. Scare scenes that are outdated and not very scary. So that's what I was expecting. I was just kind of expecting a German version of Dracula that wasn't Nosferatu. This threw down and blew my ass away. This was so different. So that's why I wanted to include it, because if you haven't seen it, if you are just thinking that this is like a Universal monster movie, which no shade at a Universal monster movie because they're my favorites, but if that's what you're thinking this is, you could not be more wrong. You definitely need to watch this. It's a really early like surrealist film. I would compare it to some of David Lynch's stuff. I would not be surprised to find out this was inspiring to him, because it's got a lot of really surreal stuff that you have to kind of like look at and be like, okay, what does this mean? And I don't know what the fuck this movie meant. I was having a hell of a time trying to figure out what was going on, but that's the strength of the movie, is I didn't have to necessarily know what's going on, what's the metaphors here, what's at play. Just visually, it was so interesting, and especially for its time, you have like shots that are, they move so much, like with other movies of the 30s. At the time, they were still new into making movies, so a lot of shots were just fixed camera shots because it makes it feel more like a play. But with this was an actual like movie, and like the camera's moving, and there's this great shot towards the end where somebody's in a coffin, and you get a POV shot of them moving in the coffin, and like that kind of camera movement had not been done to my knowledge in this time aside from this movie. So a lot of visual stuff like that is really cool, just to see like their camera techniques from back in the day that aren't the same as like other stuff that was going on. But then just a lot of just like the single shots themselves. Like there's this guy with a big scythe or whatever, just hanging out by this ocean, and it shows him a couple times, and I don't know what it means, but it's just really weird and unsettling to look at, and it like fixes on that shot for a little bit. And there's a lot of shots that are just like really, it shows you something, and the whole time it's on the screen, you're not quite sure what it is, why it's there, and that's what makes it scary. I actually got legitimately creeped out watching this, so much so to the point that my wife and I are watching it, I'm in the thick of it, and then we hear this noise coming from our back room. And I look at her like, oh shit, you better go check that out. And then she reminded me nicely that I'm the male in this relationship, so I should probably go check it out. And I checked out as my cat hacking up a hairball in the room. So then I was scared and mad for a whole nother reason. But yeah, this is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's on HBO Max to stream. But if you're into old movies and into surreal stuff, I would give this my highest recommendation. One more thing that I want to talk about with this movie was it was really cool that how they incorporated sound in this movie, because it was one of the first films to feature sound. So a lot of the dialogue and stuff like that you can tell is recorded after the fact, because I feel like they must have shot this intending it to be a silent film because there's title cards and stuff like that. But then when people talk, it's added in post, so it has like this weird, I don't know, it doesn't quite sync up, and it sounds otherworldly because it's recorded on shitty 1930s microphones. So just everything about this movie was really cool. It's one of those things where like the ancient technology involved lends itself to making a cooler movie. So my third pick, and this one I don't have a physical copy of because it's not been released in physical media, but I'm really hoping it does. But it's the Netflix special, Bo Burnham Inside. This shit, I've watched it 5 times now, and in the span of like 3 weeks. I can't stop watching it. Like, it is so good. It's kind of hard to describe, but I didn't know anything about Bo Burnham before I watched this. And I knew he was a comedian of some kind, but that's it. I'd heard some hype online about this, so I decided to give it a shot. And holy shit, I'm trying to get into more of his comedy stuff, but to call this a comedy special is kind of a disservice to it, because it's a lot, it's mostly music. It feels like a series of music videos, and he does like comedic music, but with kind of, transitional scenes in between. But it's not a straightforward A to B kind of a plot. Like, it doesn't incorporate it to make like a, here's where he starts, here's where he ends. It's not like that, but it does end up telling a story. And basically it's kind of the story of like him locked in his room during the quarantine and in his own thoughts. So he's, actually locked inside, but he's also locked inside up here too. And it is great because it's not only is it really funny, he's got quite a few songs in the movie that are just straight up like funny. There's nothing like deep or existential about it. Just, a little goof song about FaceTiming with his mom and a little goof song about sexting and stuff like that. But then you get into the real meat of it, and there are some songs that are at first funny, and then if you really think about what's going on and what he's saying, it's actually like really dark. I would say this is the first comedy special that ever like hurt my feelings. Like, I was just watching it, and he just perfectly nails that feeling of like feeling isolated and lonely and depressed, and like, just, I don't know if you ever gone through a time where you felt like that. This shit fucking nails it, and it's funny, but at the same time, it's like you want to give fucking Bo Burnham a hug by the end of it and be like, it's okay, man. But all the songs in it are either really funny or just really well done. I feel like as it goes on, the songs get less funny and more kind of dark and like dealing with emotions and mental health and things like that. But I also got to say how amazing it is that he totally shot this himself. It's shot, edited, written, like he did all the music. Like, it's everything completely done by him. And I just made a movie. I made a short film, and I've made several albums. And like to look back at what I've done and see him do this makes me feel like shit because I'm like, whoa, this guy is fucking doing everything I've wanted to do and nailing it. And not say that I'm not proud of my previous work or anything like that. I'm just like, I'm here and he was fucking here, and it's so inspiring for a person like me to watch a special like that because I'm very DIY. That's what why punk is like my favorite music genre. So I'm really do it yourself. But to see that totally done himself and to have such a great film, cohesive narrative, like I would call it a movie before I would call it a special because it really does. If you look under the surface, it really does tell a story of his kind of declining mental state, but all while being pretty hilarious. So I think everybody should watch Inside, like genuinely. Comedy is very subjective. You may love it, you may hate it, but it's an experience. I'll tell you that. I know I recommended it to my cousin. He didn't really care for it. My wife and I fucking loved it. I want to hear what more people think about it because online I feel like I see a lot of praise, but face to face and with my family, I feel like people are either not watching it or not enjoying it. So I don't know. I want to hear everybody's perspective on it. It's one of those movies I could talk endlessly about. So anyways, that's my Michael Recommends segment for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope I didn't talk too long about random bullshit, and sorry about all the tangents. Anyways, have a nice night, drive safe, and party on, Wayne.